Well, civil rights icon and U.S. Congressman John Lewis has passed away at the age of 80. Lewis helped organize that historic 1963 march in Washington with Martin Luther King Jr. He had announced that he'd been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in December. Lewis kept up the fight for civil rights, though, until the very end. He, in fact, made his last public appearance just last month. This as protests for racial justice swept across the U.S. and the entire globe. Economic empowerment activist from the door of our return, Reverend Dylan, joins us now, live from New York City to reflect on the life of Lewis. Reverend, good day to you. Thank you very much for speaking to us today. There are two items I'd like to discuss with you today, if you don't mind. One is the life of John Lewis, a man who has been described as towering. He's a giant for civil rights. The other is his involvement in the Black Lives Matter. First, if I may, Reverend, my condolences on the loss of your friend. Tell me about his life in civil rights activism right up to the very end.
Well, I think John Lewis, the late congressman, is one of those who truly, or was one of those who truly represent the struggle that black folks have endured, not just obviously in these United States of America, but across the world. He was indeed what we would call a champion for right. Everything about him was what's right. Civil rights, social rights, the right to ride anywhere in the bus that you choose to ride, the right to sit at a lunch counter and have lunch as a student. So he coined this term, good trouble. And I love the term because at the end of the day, it is really about getting in good trouble. As long as it was for the right cause, he pursued it. He was truly one addicted to good trouble.
I'd like to talk about the comparisons, Reverend, being drawn between the Black Lives Matter movement, which was very much started over in the U.S. We've certainly been experiencing that here in South Africa. There is a significance for us, though, Reverend. We've just celebrated International Nelson Mandela Day, a man who I'm sure you'll agree fought for the equality of everyone in society and the kind of influence that John Lewis had on our movements here as a result of Martin Luther King and all of those who lost their lives for civil rights. Are you getting a sense in America just how widespread this Black Lives Matter movement has gone, as it should have gone?
Well, certainly. And again, it speaks to the fact that the historic problem of what I call white supremacy and the oppression and suppression of black lives and black people is at a breaking point. And I think that's clearly what this Black Lives Matter, this modern movement, speaks to. It is by no means just starting now. John Lewis talked about his many trips to Africa and to South Africa and the conversation that he has had with leaders there, including the great Nelson Mandela. And he talked about the fact that when he first sat with people like Nelson Mandela and other key leaders in South Africa, they already knew who he was, and they knew who he was very well. Equally, the civil rights activists and leaders in the United States knew who the leaders in South Africa were, because at the end of the day, the struggle for black freedom, black empowerment has pretty much been the same, fought in America as well as being fought in South Africa. And so he talked about the fact that there were so many things that they had in common, because at the end of the day, the struggle for black folks to really get to a place of not just political freedom and political empowerment, but certainly to get to a place of economic equality and economic freedom is a struggle that continues. And that's why the Black Lives Matter movement is such a critical movement now, not a specific organization, but just the movement in general.
I would like, if you perhaps could bear with me, Reverend, I'd like to make this the last question to you. You and I can speak all day, but I would like to ask this of you. I'm going to read a quote of John Lewis about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I quote, "This feels and looks so different, there will be no turning back." We've just shown our viewers, I know you can't see it, Reverend, we've just shown our viewers a tweet from Barack Obama. How different would this Black Lives Matter movement have been had Barack Obama still been in the White House compared to the president you now have running your country? How would you compare and contrast those leaders in the Black Lives Movement matter?
Yeah, I think very clearly the president of the United States, who just recently tweeted out white power, is clearly one who wants to perpetuate white control. He wants to perpetuate white supremacy. Barack Obama, to the contrary, was one who was for all people and wanted to see all people rise, and particularly those who've been oppressed, suppressed, and repressed all these years. So those were obviously key points and thought for him. But I think the key point is back in the time of John Lewis, we didn't have the smartphones to film everything everywhere. So I think because of the abundance of filming all of the atrocities and the injustices that black folks are facing, it really gives more fuel and more potency to the black movement, whether it's the Black Lives Matter movement in the 60s with John Lewis and people like Reverend C.T. Vivian, who we also lost, who fought together and were a part of Bloody Sunday together. The fact of the matter is that there's no stopping. I agree with John Lewis that there's no stopping now, and I think it's time for all of us as a people across the African diaspora, meaning outside of the continent, as well as those in the continent, to understand that there has to be a fusion now more than ever. That's why this door of our return, this linking, is critical to the journey ahead for black folks in America as well as across the globe.
John Lewis, a towering figure of civil rights, and what a pleasure and honor, Reverend, to speak to you all the way from New York City. I thank you for your time as we continue to discuss Black Lives Matter. Reverend Dennis Dillon, economic empowerment activist, doors of our return. He's live to us on Skype from over in the United States. John Lewis passing away at the age of 80 just yesterday.